today. Dune, Prophecy, Episode 3, Sisterhood Above All. I think, based on some conversations I saw from Kyle in the Discord, we may have some conflicting opinions here. There may be some hot takes all around. I'm actually curious to let Paul give his opinion first because I think I know where Kyle's going to go. So, Paul, talk to me about what you thought about this. We'll call it flashback episode, Sisterhood Above All.
I started cracking up first thing because the end of last episode, we were kind of like, all right, I think we got a lot of the exposition dumps settled. I think we're kind of gonna go into the main, gut of the story, but they pulled a fast one on us because we went all the way back. We got a like young Valia, young Tula, which I didn't hate. I think it really does add so much to why Valia is like she is, why Tula follows her sister, and all this other stuff. So it's nice to have that. I think if they threw that in the beginning, episode 1, they wouldn't catch enough people. It would just be too slow. So I do like the backstory. There's some twists in here that I didn't see coming. Still a little bit of a slower episode, but doesn't mean I didn't like it. I just every time they change scenes and show a shot of a ship just coming down in a beautiful city, I get so excited. Like I pause and like look at it. Like it's stupid, but that's how excited I get. So that being said, couldn't be more excited for episode 4. We didn't get our boy this Desmond Hart here. That was a little upsetting because, like I said, he just jumps off the screen. But I think we're pretty much done with the setup now. I say that, but we'll see.
I want to jump in before Kyle does because I think I know where his opinion is going to go. I just want to say I think that this should have been the first episode because now we're at the point where it almost feels like a microcosm of the broader issue with the show where we know the final point of being the Dune movies and we're starting here at 10,000 years ago. So we kind of don't have as much wiggle room as we would like. And it felt like we just did the same thing again in a smaller scale with going back to the beginning of Valia and Tola's story, where we kind of already know where it's going to end up. So there wasn't too much wiggle room, but I would have loved all that relationship building and the motivation building and even some of the world building we got here that we didn't get necessarily in the first 2 episodes. That's going to be some of the fun stuff to break down where it is the Easter egg connections to the Dune series. But I really feel strongly, and this is just an initial take. I just finished watching the episode. I think this should have been the first episode because the Dorothea death would have hit harder. I think everything about Tula's character I now enjoy more because of this flashback episode where I didn't necessarily care too much about her before this. So I think all of that would have been better, and especially like the explanation for why she's anti-Harkonnen and she still hates the Atreides at the same time. All the Valia characterizations I thought would have hit a little better. So I don't know if you necessarily disagree with that piece, Kyle, because I know you probably didn't like the episode as much as I did, but do you agree or disagree with this would have been a stronger first episode rather than kind of just going back after 2/6 of the series already under the belt? Then they decide to make it the halfway point is when we decide to go back to the beginning. It just felt like we didn't need to do all this. It's kind of felt like The Witcher, where we're like jumping around for the timeline for no reason. Like it could have just went in a row, and the reveals I thought would have been better.
Yeah, that's something I didn't think of reordering this in terms of the episode count. Yeah, maybe first or second episode. I liked it a lot more on the second watch because I think the first watch, when I'm first watching it and we left off last episode, like, oh my God, we have all these things we're looking forward to and like we're making predictions about things, and one plot line progressed. It inched forward. I mean, granted, it's a big step in that ending scene that we get with Tula, but that was when I first watched it. I was like, damn, we're halfway through the season. Like we just spent a full hour on all these flashbacks when we only have 6 hours. It just felt like that's what I was thinking as the episode kept going on and on and on. And that definitely tainted my initial take on it. But watching it again, I really enjoyed it. I thought the stuff with Tula in the flashback was awesome. I really enjoy her character, like you mentioned. The Valia flashback stuff wasn't like incredibly insightful, except for the fact that her family didn't like her. And that answered that question we had from the premiere that Luke, we talked about, like you just mentioned, that why she doesn't like her family so much. And yeah, it just felt like, dang, we're halfway through.
But like to continue on to what else got built up this episode that if it was built up first would have hit harder in episode 1 was everything to do with Tortilla. I didn't care about Raquel's death in the beginning. I also didn't understand or have a good grasp, and I think it's the show's fault for not explaining how prevalent the sisterhood was already at the point when Valia joined. I felt that the first episode was giving the vibe that like Raquel being one of the first mother superiors was really just starting the process of the truth sayers. And she really is like, she's still making that happen, but they already had more power than I was giving them credit. And I felt like this episode would have been good again, initially first for the world building moment. And it was also good for the voice development because that was something I asked for where I wanted to see the voice grow. And this was like, I can't understand the decision because it wasn't like there was a big payoff moment that only really made sense because we knew a little bit about the future, except for the Dune future stuff. Like, how much did knowing episode 1 and 2 add to the fact that this was like a prequel episode? Because I can't really wrap my head around what the decision making was for this from the writers' room, but whatever. And we also skipped the power struggle that we were talking about, Kyle, from episode 1 with the sisters. Like, we could have explored the power struggle through this more. But anyway, go ahead, Paul.
I agree with what you're saying. I honestly only think that they did this because they needed to grasp or grab people off of just one episode to keep them watching. And I don't think this would have done it. I do think a lot of the payoffs would have been way better. Like you're saying, Dorothea, like didn't give a shit first episode when I'm watching her bleed out because I'm like, who's this? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I was surprised we got more of her. I will say I do think that without the backdrop of the machine wars and everything like that, the reveal wouldn't have been as good. But then again, that was like present day. That wasn't one of the flashbacks. So I guess that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it is very
that's why I was
interesting.
thinking maybe like the second episode. I could
Yeah.
have seen this being maybe the second episode, but yeah. Another weird thing, like you're saying, with the premiere was it really felt like Raquel randomly picked Valia.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this episode showed us that was not even close to the case. Like she was pretty much raising her up to be the next one without trying to slight Dorothea so much, where she gives them both the option with the agony. So that was something that, like, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, this was somewhat unexpected that they're just like walking around. She's showing her the genetic library and all this stuff. Like she had all this information already. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like we're going to be a little bit more positive about this episode than I initially thought. I think it still might settle as the worst on IMDb, but it looks like based on trajectory, it's still going to be above a 7.0, which is still high quality TV. Maybe it's not prestige level, but enough that I can still hang my nerd hat on this and continue liking it because I love Dune. So if you guys are ready, we can just start jumping through the backstory, and we'll of course end in the modern day where we get some of those crazy reveals that might lead into a theory or two. You guys ready?
yes.
Okay. So let us go to the home world of the Harkonnens, which I pointed out last episode that the Emperor's home planet switches from Dune Prophecy show to the movies, and we got confirmation based on the name that so does the Harkonnens, because in the movies it's Getty Prime with the black sun, the cool ass Austin Butler scenes. We're not there. We're in the whale world. I don't even know, but we did know that this was their trade based on some political conversations happening in the throne room earlier in the season. But it was kind of cool to see all the whale meat flowing. Like they were just had this whole economy based around it. It kind of coincides with the Harkonnens being on the low since they were shut out ever since the Atreides rewrote the history. So that's like very important. And I'm going to stop right now because of course I'm so mad I haven't said it yet, but shout out Bobby B, baby.
Yeah.
I can't believe we got Bobby Baratheon showing up in both the flashback and we're going to have him as a character going forward, which is freaking awesome. Game of Thrones reference for those uninitiated.
Yeah.
Well,
that was awesome.
I looked it up because now I was curious, and that's the 5th, I think, Game of Thrones actor that's in the show now. Yeah, which is crazy.
There's a lot of crossover. First one that
I didn't
to
even
mind.
realize it, but yeah. So the 5 being actually, Duke Richese or Count Richese. Now I'm forgetting what they even call him in this show, but he is one of the soldiers that are part of Yara Greyjoy's crew. Now we have Valia's uncle is Bobby B. We never mentioned this because we gave her the Witcher props, but the Empress, Queen, what is it? Who is she from The Witcher again?
Calanthe.
Queen what? Calanthe is the Woods Witch, who gives Cersei her like prophecy
Didn't
stuff.
remember that.
I would never have known that ever in my life. And then Ollie, of course.
Yeah.
And
Call
then there
that
is
out.
like there's one guy that's in a Game of Thrones show that I don't think has been in Dune Prophecy yet. So I think we'll get there.
Cool. So just to take us back to Lankavale, we just get the vibe of like what the whole family dynamic is. And Valia has always been a very ambitious person. And we found this out from the first scene that we get of her in episode 1. She wants to restore the name of her family and she blames everything on the Atreides. And coincidentally, Vorian Atreides who is somebody that helped perpetuate this lie, has popped back up. And also coincidentally, the third sibling of Tola and Valia is basically being sent to the Landsrat to give an opportunity to raise the status of the Harkonnens and participate in the politics. But what Valia wants him to do is hunt down Vorian and basically force him to change everything so that they can right the wrong that was done to them in history. So we get all these little info drops about the backstory, whatever you guys want to bring up. If I guess now is a good stopping point. We found out about the father being a mayor. Like anything you want to talk about before Griffin goes away.
We saw Griffin give the carved tooth to Tulla, which before we saw Tulla give to Lila. So again, maybe would have been a better payoff if we had that before, but this was kind of more of a reveal. So I don't know. Interesting. But yeah, I just don't really like Valia. Like I like that she's driven. I just think she's driven for the wrong reasons. I mean, good for her for accomplishing basically what she's been trying to do. I don't know like how fully she's done it because episode 1, she's like rejecting the Harkonnens, but it almost seems like she still wants to build them up, or maybe there was some fracture that now she doesn't even give a shit about that anymore. But I mean, it's so hard for me to root for young Valia.
I don't know if you're supposed to.
Yeah.
My thought here is that when I watched this the first time, I was thinking it's so interesting when she's talking about how the complacency is a disease and how her mom and her uncle and her father are basically saying, that she's greedy and entitled. And my thought was that she acts more like the Harkonnens that we know from the movies where their ambition knows no bounds. They just want the money and all of that stuff. And my initial thought was, oh, that's like, I wonder if we'll see the impact that she has on the house moving forward. Like, does she have kids? Is she like actually become an advisor? Like when she works the Harkonnens into her plans, like is her mindset going to induce that change that they're more like the family that we see in the movies? But then we get to the end of the episode and they've gone way beyond the whaling village. So it doesn't seem like she had a huge impact on that. So I'll be interested to see as we move into the next episodes what the current state of the Harkonnens are really like.
And she was rejecting their request to get a truce-sayer. And it could just be because of that internal hatred. While she does respect her family name, she still also, they all turn their back on her. So she literally almost killed her mom or her aunt. I don't know if they clarified at the end with the voice. So all the bridges are burned. That was her mom. Okay. Because I know obviously Bobby B's the uncle and everything, but we'll talk a little bit more. Yeah.
She is also from a great HBO show. She plays Ati of the Julii in Rome. So all the Rome heads out there are dozens of us.
So do you guys, are you guys on the mindset that the current day Valia has like denounced her house, or do you think she's like she's still playing it slow 100 and however many years later, so when the right moment comes she can just shoot them up without question?
Honestly, I took the scene later on when she actually goes through the agony as her like realizing that what she thought about the house was wrong and that the Atreides were kind of right.
That's so funny. I literally wrote that. I was like, she seems more clear. She's speaking with less hatred after the agony. But in my head, I like, she's still rooting for Harkonnen, waiting for the right moment to pounce or something.
Like unless the quote that she says, "We have a new purpose now," goes beyond just the petty revenge on the Atreides and more about shaping the Imperium for the Harkonnens, but it doesn't seem like that's what it was. Maybe it is that more long-term play, but I more read it as like a rejection of her house and more of that like gung-ho commitment to the sisterhood.
And I think that makes more sense because it's not like she at the drop of the hat when she hears about the Atreides, that's definitely has to be known that's living in the palace. Like she's not out here just trying to murder him like on the spot. So I do think her priorities shifted around, and that makes so much sense. Becoming a Reverend Mother is like the most crazy mental just trip you'll ever go on your entire life. And I do love that they keep showing like the blue molecular just mixture
Yeah.
with the bloodstream and all that. It's so cool.
I was disappointed that we didn't get to see anything though. I guess we were led to make those breadcrumb clues ourselves, or if it'll come in the future, maybe she'll talk about it.
That's my
Definitely.
Feels
guess.
like too big of a thing
Yeah.
to not discuss.
I was
Right.
I was getting so excited. I was like, "Oh my god, we're gonna like what Lila got versus what Valia was like going to get." I was so excited, and then they cut,
Mhm.
and then she talks about like a higher purpose, and I was like, they teased us with it, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
a reveal later on.
No, I think it's going to be a reveal. I totally don't think now that they brought the younger actors back, I don't think it's the last time. Even if we'll never get a centric episode around all the backstory, which I don't think we want at this point, but just here or there, important plot points would be nice. But just to take it back to the end of this whole initial time spent on this planet, we do have Griffin showing her respect to the sister, how much he loves her, and because especially because she saved his life, and he basically is willing to go along with the plan to hunt down the Atreides. That seeds the hate after he comes back dead. And now it's totally explainable why Valio just wants to basically just make the plan around that, at least at this point in the story. And then she
I
finds
had
out she's being sent to Wallach 9. That's like it for this part.
I had the South Park meme, and he's gone. Literally right after Valia was talking to Griffin, like, if that's what you say is right, we're gonna do that. We're gonna make her name, and then dead, horizontal.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if, and now we don't know the true mechanics of the agony because we saw with Lila, it was like the mother, the grandmother, that type of stuff. Can you talk to, is it just purely the maternal line, or can you speak horizontally? Like, could she have spoken, or could Griffin have spoken to her in the agony and said it wasn't Vorin Atreides? Like, could that have been a lie that she just believed?
It's definitely just the maternal line because I think that's like a
Okay.
whole plot point that goes on in the Dune movies with when Paul's mom takes it and then he takes it and obviously sees like all of his sister who took it as well. I think it's just the maternal thing. And yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I could see like that tragedy essentially being that Valia learns that it wasn't actually Vorin Atreides and that she sent Tulla to kill all of them, almost purely reasoned behind the murder of Griffin, and then her kind of keeping that from Tulla as being like, damn, that's my bad. And then it like eventually getting out and further causing that splintering that I'm kind of even more rooting for at this point between the sisters in the present day.
Yeah, I don't think there are men in there because I'm pretty sure we see faces and they've talked about it before. But again, like, yeah, it could because it's an instant death thing if you take it as a guy. So I don't know.
It looked like a lot of ladies in hoods. So
yeah,
I'm just trying to weasel any little way into that sisterhood break, the double entendre sisterhood break.
Question for you guys. So right here after Griffin's like funeral, Valia's already saying she's going to Wallach 9, and she tells Tulla, don't stay on this planet, find something else out there. All that's here is death and rot. Do you think, and this is kind of jumping ahead, do you think this is where Valia and Tulla kind of schemed together? Or do you think Tulla just went off and wanted to revenge for her brother by herself? Because it seems like they planned it. They even had like a code word together. And I was trying to figure out when they made this plan. And it must have been, before Valia left to go to Wallach 9, join the sisterhood.
So to me, what I felt like the whole purpose of showing the intimacy with that Tulla had with Ori and then making that decision despite him committing himself and they were going to get married and all that. I feel like the purpose of that was to show that that Tulla has now just gone both feet in, right? Like she has gone so deep with Valia, and she says like, let this be a new start for us. And then if you add into it 30 years of them training as sisters together, knowing the plan and being close to each other, now it's just too late to go back. And you're seeing her being like regretful over everything to do with Lila, where maybe she's sitting here thinking, I shouldn't have been just blindly following Valia and her plan. And I should have had some more morals and ideals and stuck with what I thought like internally. That's how I kind of took it. But we do really need to see how Valia reacts to what Tola's doing to Lila. And she might actually, that might be like a permanent rift where she kind of comes forward and says like, okay, like there, that's where the sisters really break up. Because right now, I truly think she's like blindly going to follow Valia's plan, just like Griffin did. But maybe I'm reading too into that.
Yeah, Paul, I think we might have not missed some scenes because that implies that they took them out, but like things happened in the background in that space of time. I don't know if they were good, but again, were they communicating directly? Because we're seeing that Raquel kind of intercepts the one message, so they couldn't have been obviously like, "Hey, go kill all these motherfuckers," because the message, would have been intercepted at some point. So, I don't know if they would have had time to hatch it because it almost seemed like she was leaving immediately, but maybe they did, and we just didn't see it. But it seems like there was some interactions that we didn't see between them, quote unquote, over the years, over time.
Because in my head, I thought like Tola was doing all this, like as I was watching it, I thought she was doing it all without Valia knowing, and then Valia was gonna find out and be like, oh my goodness, like look what you did for our family. But it seemed to be a plan. So I don't know. We'll get more into it as we get there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is kind of where we get a little bit of a split, and we have Tula's side story and then Valia's side story on Wallach 9. So starting with Tula, we just get thrown right into it. She meets all of Ori, who's an Atreides, and like the Atreides clan, whoever his family's with. And the point that she's here for is to get her revenge. And I'm really upset because I thought what the toxin that she ends up using on the whole family was related to the gom jabber from the Dune movies, like what they use when you're putting your hand in the box. But I was looking into it. I don't think it is. Because they say that the gom jabber is like a meta cyanide tipped knife, so I think that's just like straight hardcore poison versus this being from like an animal. It would have been a cool connection, but it just happened to be a coincidence. But it was just a lot of just what we already talked about. We find out that Tola and Ori are going to be engaged or whatever, but it was all just a murder plot. I thought Ori was the man. I was so sad when the realization hit, and then he even was gonna be willing to accept her as a Harkonnen. And I thought that was the reveal, and then it turns into, I just kind of murdered everybody. But then they let Ollie live, who has to carry on the Atreides line. But this was
Albert.
Ollie, Ollie from Game of Thrones.
Of course.
Albert was his name. I just was thinking Game of Thrones the whole time. Didn't even
didn't clock it at all. I was like, this fucking dick.
I know.
I hope Dean watches the show and then eventually is surprised by him popping up in a scene. I need that live reaction.
He still looks so young.
He does.
He does. That's what
I thought
at the beginning.
Was, like some of the most well done thing in the show. The whole twist of this all. I thought it was great. I thought it was better than anything that happened in episode 1, better than anything that really happened in episode 2. It's just almost a shame that my overall feelings and what we talked about at the start kind of tinge it a little bit. But I thought it was awesome. This was super cool.
Me too. I totally thought it was the best part of the episode.
I mean, the slow reveal, the morning after, and they're talking, and first of all, you don't know what's going to come. First of all, you're going to be like, oh my God, Ori's going to hate her. Ori's going to like cast her aside after they just, spent this love together. I don't know. That was a terrible phrase, but spent this love together. But then like the slow reveal of, oh my God, what did you do? Why is it so quiet? I thought it was brilliantly done. And then, once he saw everything, I was like, here she comes with the needle again. And it was sad because it seems like she did care. Like everything Ori was talking about, like, oh, our parents were like raised to hate this ancestors war that happened forever ago. Like you didn't choose your last name. Like we can do this together and build our future. It was really well done. because that
Mhm.
was like the first curveball was, oh, Ori's cool with it, and then the second one is, oh, she's not cool with them, and just
Yeah.
brilliant.
She really wanted him to hate her.
I
Make it
think
easier.
so, yeah.
Just to make it easier. Yeah. And this is also
Mhm.
why I was really headcanoning that Valia spoke to Griffin in the agony to tell her this, because I want it to be true that Vorn Atreides didn't kill Griffin. That being like almost the straw that broke the camel's back for Tulla in the future.
Mm.
Because she mentioned that he was there, that like Vorian Atreides died, but Vorian Atreides, would he not be like 125 fucking years old? Like, how was he there?
I thought the same thing, but I think they were implying that he was the one that helped write the histories. I don't necessarily know if he was the one that was in the Machine Wars 130 whatever years ago, but he could have been. Like people live very long, like I think in these
Yeah,
days too. Like the age thing is
that's what I was a
different.
little confused by. Was he the guy with the white hair when she unravels all the tools and is there kind of
Yeah,
chatting to her? I didn't know if he was the one that was asking her about her family, the younger guy that was supposed to tell Ollie to shoot Bo. I mean, we maybe not won't get the answer, but I was just something I was
yeah.
curious about, because it seemed like he had a. I was anticipating or interpreting him having been involved in the Great Machine Wars like
Mhm.
Raquel was, and then also somehow still being around here now and
And,
murder, because I just didn't know.
and was it also implied that what's his name? Albert, actually his actual name Albert, is that what it is?
Mhm.
Ollie's? Yeah, is he
Albert, yeah.
actually is it implied that he is the literal last Atreides alive in the universe at this point, or is it just
That
the
was
main offshoot of the family? Because they weren't clear about
yeah.
that.
That was my question to you guys that I was about to ask, because when Tula says like they're all done, they're all gone or whatever, they're all dead. I didn't know if she just meant to that one like clan of Atreides or just all of them. But I mean,
Yeah,
I guess it's all
they're
of
not
them.
too clear about it, especially because well, we obviously know Kieran's around in the modern quote unquote modern time right now. Is Albert Kieran's it would only be dad at that point because it was only 30 years. So like and at that point, like he would still be like a very highly protected person as like what the as Kieran being one of the last people that's surviving house. So I don't know. Like that definitely was not clear at all. And did they even say like was this Ori's clan? So that's what the question is, right? Like was Ori just one of the people dying by the fire? Or not, sorry, not Ori. Was Vorian one of the dead people by the fire? Like is that again, yeah. So even
Yeah,
though I'm saying
I
it's the
was
best part of the whole
confused.
show, like I still don't understand the
Yeah.
specifics, and that I think that's the show writer's fault, less so us being just not observant enough, right?
Because
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just don't know
Valia
yet.
wouldn't
I mean,
sorry, I keep doing that.
you're good.
Valia wouldn't be as proud for Tulla if she just killed like a few Atreides, right? Like she would want to be like Griffin would be proud that you got the guy that got him. So I really don't know. It's super vague to me, but I feel like there
Yeah,
should be other Atreides out there.
yeah,
Some of there has to be, because Kieran is an Atreides through some way.
Yeah.
There were women Atreides left alive. It seemed the men on the hunt. So maybe
So
younger boy Atreides that weren't old enough to be on the hunt. But yeah, it almost seems like they're asking us to fill in those blanks at this point. I guess it doesn't seem like they are asking us to fill in these blanks at this point. So
right.
one
we'll just have to
thing
see.
one thing that I'm waiting for to come back as a reveal is when Ori's horse is dying, he like puts his hand on his head, like all distressed, and he's got a pinky ring on. And that was like right in the center of the screen. And I was like, all right, that just literally could be wardrobe, or we're gonna get a reveal like Tulla is gonna see that ring pop up on somebody in the future, and then she's gonna freak the fuck out because Albert went back to the other clans or whatever, and
Hmm.
survived and came back. So I don't know if that ring could literally be nothing, or it could be, hey, everybody you thought you killed, like here's
Just lived on, yeah.
yeah.
People were saying that was like the Duke, like the signet ring that
Hmm.
Paul gets in
Ah,
the movies, like that Ori was the heir to the Atreides clan.
seemed a little small.
But that
But
would
I just don't know, because then
wouldn't
Yeah.
can
that
someone go
work
back
though?
into the so would someone go back into the forest, I guess, and picked it off them when they figured out they never came back?
Well, definitely that would have had to happen, but I also think that would make having have killed that specific group of Atreides a success in Valia's mind, and others can exist if the main heir died. So that might
Yeah.
connect everything if that's really what they were going for, but they could have done a better job of outlining that, if I'm being honest. But
Yeah, I don't know. They do have somewhat of an issue of some of the dialogue's too obvious, but but giving us maybe some info, like who is this guy? Yeah, maybe wouldn't have been that bad of a thing. I do think I liked the lore connection to the movies. I guess to keep it on that line at the Signet Ring with the solution bull, the bullfighting, the bull hunting stuff, because we know that Leto's dad died from the bull. They talk about that in the first Dune movie, so I thought that was a really cool thing.
that's
Totally
a great
forgot
catch.
about that.
Yeah, because he has it like mounted and everything. That's a good
Yeah.
catch. Yeah.
Well, the one thing too is, so as this scene ends and we get the kill stuff, and just like in my mind thinking, what is really the point of this? And my kind of takeaway is that Tula really is this rider for the family, but it seemed almost more for like Griffin's, like the revenge specifically. Like she doesn't really hold a ton of hatred in her heart afterwards because she says like, I want this fresh start. And I'm so infected with this sisterhood split thing that it just feels like the point of this is to make it difficult in the future emotionally for her to break with Valia.
That's a good point because it seems like when she was younger, her only drive, get revenge for her brother, get quote unquote justice. And then after that, it seems like she didn't have any drive. She was just like, you know what, Valia, let's just go to Wallach 9. This will be a new start. And she's just been kind of riding Valia's tails. And maybe that leads to a split. She finally has something that she cares about or has another drive. And it just directly confronts Valia's, motive or drive.
Yeah, this seems like the Lila thing feels like the first like motivation we've really gotten out of her. Like she kind of follows the orders, but does she believe the orders so much? Thing. So Tola's kind of now taking that spot of maybe she's the most interesting character.
No, this whole little bucket made me think Tola's character is better than Valia, just in hindsight of applying this backstory to the future. And it's not like Valia's a bad character; she's just less interesting now that we know what's really going on. But if you're ready, we'll go start working through Valia's next little plot line here, where she's back on Wallach 9, and she's going through all the acolyte training, but as we all probably expect, she's like ambitious and she's super cocky. She's not the best student, and she's refusing to put the sisterhood above all because of her personal vendettas. That's like the whole point of this backstory until she takes the agony test. But Raquella acknowledges her pretty early on due to just acknowledging her strength, right? Like she was able to be true to herself, and she even gets I guess part of the acknowledgement also gets paired at the same time with her revealing the voice for the first time, which she's only done. I think that was the second time she's ever done in her life. It's always when a crisis is happening, but then Raquella ends up letting her get onto the inside. And this part was awesome. This is something we were really looking forward to, Kyle. I think originally when we talked about the genetic library, she gets to see what Raquella's plan is and what that actually means past just like a buzzword genetic library. They go on to say that they want to breed the royal lines to a point that corruption is not really possible for, like, it's less likely for the future rulers. And I think that was a question we were asking, right? Like, what actually were they doing? So were you satisfied with that being the purpose of the genetic breeding program?
I thought so too, especially because when we talked about it last episode of, do we think that this prophecy from Akella is Paul Atreides, or is it more smaller scale to what's immediately happening? And this made it feel like it's more smaller scale to what's immediately happening. Like they weren't thinking that thousands of years, big picture type stuff.
That's they want.
It will be interesting. Yeah, it will be interesting if we get there by the end. But it's Raquella at least didn't seem to be thinking on that scale.
And the reveal later is that it's Lila almost, right? Well, okay, sorry. That's jumping ahead to Theory Town. Sorry. I'll save that for a little bit later. Okay, we'll talk. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I just know you read the Discord message from Meryl that I totally loved and want to give her a shout out to, but we'll talk about it at the end. So, Paul, just any other thoughts you want to throw out there, because this is like all of the voice reveal. We even get to see the Cone of Silence, which I loved that they whipped that out from the Dune movies. If you remember, it was when Valia was telling her two friends, like, and then you see Raquel's point of view. You see that little cone outline that the Baron uses in the movies, which was probably quick to and easy to miss for a lot of people. But I love when they bring that tech back, even though it should have probably been less advanced. But yeah. So what
Yeah.
else? Any other opinions you had, Paul?
No, I just to piggyback what you guys are saying, I like that their goal was to just try to get leaders who are less tyrannical, that are willing to open and discuss others and actually care about others. So I thought that was cool. And then I also just throughout these scenes, you see Dorothea and Valia like butt heads constantly. Dorothea is just talking down to her nonstop. And then once Raquella actually acknowledges her and lifts her up, that's like Dorothea's worst nightmare. And I mean, even from when Raquella first met Valia, they're doing that shit out in the rain, meditating, sisterhoods above all. And Dorothea says to Valia, like, I'm not interested in a battle of wills. You don't belong here. Get out. So pretty clear, they hate each other. And that just confuses me because we get to Raquella, when she's about to give both of them the agony. Raquella was saying followers lead to divisiveness, and that's not what we want. We want to be together, sisterhood above all. So, like, why would she choose Valia and elevate her to such a place of status if this was clearly going to cause divisiveness? It was just weird. And obviously there's something later on, some reveal hopefully that we'll get, but it was just interesting for Raquella, who's all knowing, working towards a future, just to obviously there's going to be that.
I think it was a very human moment for her, or I guess maybe moments, thought processes, because they talk about how Dorothea went to the Butlerians and came back as this zealot, this whole anti-machine technology zealot. She wasn't always like this. So in my head, it was like Raquella sent her there to whatever, maybe gain some worldly experience, and then she came back this huge anti any machine zealot, and Raquel was probably like, "Oh, brother, like this is bad news," because I was supposed to give her this secret of the freaking AI that's supposed to save everything in the future, and this is like the basis of everything that we do. So she was almost searching around for someone else, it seems like, but she almost maybe didn't have, that motherly instinct inside of her couldn't let her cut Dorothea off and essentially kill her the way that Valia does so quickly afterwards. I mean, there was no way that the two of them could coexist as Reverend Mothers and both share a vision for the future. So that's the way I took it, was that Raquella knew in her heart of hearts that Dorothea couldn't do what needed to be done.
But gotcha.
That's a fantastic take on it too, with the reasoning of her sending her away, coming back, changed all of that. And you can even just boil it down even simpler to the idea that the sisterhood is a cult. You need sheep for the cult to work, and Dorothea fits into the sheep side, but you do need somebody that's like an independent, free, strong thinker to lead them. So it almost makes sense to have Dorothea be on the side of like unite all the sisters into this just brainwashed mindset, whereas Valia was more of a free thinker like Raquel that could be the person to lead this and take him to like the hard goal. So, but I do love what you just said there, Kyle. I think that was great.
Yeah, I loved the clash that Dorothea and Valia have initially, where Valia's like in the mindset of utilizing the truth as a tool, and the truth saying ability as a way to influence and wield influence over leaders. And Dorothea has the very moralistic view where like, that's wrong. We can't do that. And again, right there is like, hey, you ain't cut out to lead the sisterhood. Like we're not going to get nowhere if you think like that.
See, I would have been sad when Dorothea died just because I like this dynamic if they gave us this first. But when it first happens, I'm like, okay, that character had 5 seconds of screen time. So I'm just going to keep going back to that as being a weird writing decision. I would have put this whole episode first, but that's just me. Let me just rip through the next couple of scenes and we can finish with the backstory of Valia, where at the very end of her on this planet, she's given the agony test with Dorothea, but she ends up rejecting it. And that's when Raquel says, go home. Don't come back unless you're a Reverend Mother, which is kind of badass. But Dorothea gives herself to it and becomes a Reverend Mother on the spot. But we're going to lump all this back with going back to Lenkavale. And we have all of the Harkonnens just absolutely shitting on Valia to her face. I didn't expect it to really go like that, but they were all just blaming her for what Tola ended up doing, because they're saying like Valia brainwashed her, all these things. And that's where like the inner hate of the family really comes out. And then she almost kills her mother with the voice. And then the last thing that happens, we already talked about it for a second. She ends up going outside, taking the agony test, and is saved by Tola, wakes up and says, "We have a new purpose." So that's the rest of the backstory. Thoughts?
One question that's going to go back to Dorothea. Raquella has the quote that says, "You've both pushed the boundaries of what it means to be human." We know that Valia's boundary pushes the voice. What is Dorothea's? I don't know if we'll find out. I just was curious because it didn't seem like she showed anything. Like she believes in this Butlerian anti-machine jihad mindset, which they refuse to say the J word. But I don't know. Like that's clearly not pushing the boundary of what it means to be human. And she's learning that from other people. She's not pushing that boundary. So I didn't know what she meant by that.
My only guess would be that she's such a good truth sayer, Dorothea is, that she even read Valia while like she's in the middle of lessons. Like Dorothea reads Valia and says like, "Oh, you're scared," and all this other stuff. So that would be my guess. She's like incredibly good at truth saying, and therefore that like goes beyond human abilities. Because Raquella also had this line where she's talking about Valia's tragedy, and she says, I have it right here. She says crisis, survival, advancement. So like she's talking about like trying to evolve humanity to be better individuals, and maybe truth saying is one of those things. She's like, that's the next step, like after humanity or whatever.
It's very similar to the whole purpose of Deadpool 1, right? Like you push all the humans to their crisis point and then they either die or they end up evolving into the X-Men like Deadpool does. But also you can even go hand in hand with what Paul just said, like link it to, like you're saying, like she was exceptional. She was so exceptional that when the next ancestor Lila took the agony, she just overpowered all of the other Reverend Mothers that were there, and she basically just she put her in a coma or whatever. I don't even know if that's what happens to Lila, but it could just be like raw just abilities. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. That Deadpool reference brings back both bad and good memories.
Is it right though? Isn't that kind of what it
shout out Byron, shout out the Bahamas. Shout out peanut butter sandwiches. Shout out Tommy King, shout out Golden Shepherds.
Hell yeah. Are we good on the agony test that she ends up self-administrating, right? Like we're probably okay there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, we talked about it enough where we didn't get the answers we were looking for, so we'll have to see if they give them to us.
Yeah, but this is the seed planting for how much hatred the Harkonnens have for her that pays off in this next scene when we go back to modern time. But if we are going to jump right back to 30 years into the future, and two things happen. I guess we have the Tulith stuff and then the Valia stuff. So they're not technically on the same planet because we're on the Emperor's planet and then we're on Wallach 9 still. So for the Tulith stuff, Paul, you catch that whispering right when we first saw her?
Dude, I was like, because it stops and then she picks up the tea and drinks the tea and it starts up again. And I'm like, is it constant? Does she always hear whispering? Or is it like what we hear? It's very frustrating.
Spice can rejuvenate the mind, baby.
Yes. The spice is a huge part of it. But how consistent are they with rules is the next question, right? Like that's always the question for great shows. Like, is it actually just like a atmosphere cinematography thing, or is there like literal times when the whispering is happening and literal characters that are causing it to happen? Who knows? Like the show doesn't have the goodwill built up for me to just say that it's all planned, but it is something that I'm now, since you brought it up, constantly just looking for. Was that the only time there was whispering this episode, or was there another one?
There was a few, but it only took place when Valia and Tuller were older. I didn't hear any whispering when they were young and sisters, so maybe it has to be a Reverend Mother to hear it.
Okay,
but I'm not 100%.
That makes sense because when you're on the other side of the agony, you have access to all the Reverend Mothers of your ancestry line in the past, so they could be the ones like guiding you. It could just be as simple as that. I hope there's like a payoff past the eeriness. The eeriness is cool by itself, but I kind of want a little bit more, especially because we talked about it now twice, and it's now just sticking in the front of my head every time I'm watching it.
Like, is that a
They
hint?
mentioned that Thalia drinks the spiced tea every day. So maybe it is the way to rekindle part of that connection that you get in the agony. You're opening up that pathway a little bit of that connection
Some
to
of
the
that. Yeah,
ancestor.
I like that.
Yeah. So maybe they're always like, when we're hearing it, they're on some spice. We just haven't seen them take it.
Gotcha. I didn't
And-
realize that she drank that tea every single day. So that's noted.
Meryl actually pointed that out in the Discord too, I think, or maybe it was it Meryl? I believe so.
I'm not entirely sure.
It was either Meryl or Kat. Shout out to both you guys. You guys are awesome. So just continuing with the Tula stuff though, after she decides to say goodbye to Jen and brings all the acolytes in, Jen's pissed. I feel like Jen's such an interesting character because I have zero clue what like her payoff's going to be or like what she's going to end up doing. She seems like she's just pissed off at the sisterhood in the same way that Tula is starting to be pissed off at the sisterhood for what happened to Lila because of Valia's plan. So maybe she'll end up being on Tula's side. I know Kyle did actually predict that it would be Theodasia versus Jen. Is that her name? Theodasia? Yeah. So that kind of got a little bit more weight, I think, after this.
You mean positively?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Jen's going to fall right in line with AI Tula.
Yeah, right? Like, she's definitely going to be anti-Valia. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but then the AI scene happens as well. And that's definitely something I want to talk about where Tula is just going to shoot her up with spice and see what happens. She thinks that the healing properties could bring her out of this spiritual coma. And that was a really badass moment when the AI thing came to life. She just got shot with the orange spice. I got pretty hyped. I'm not going to lie. That made me excited for the next episode.
There was not 1 second where I thought that Tula actually ended Lila's suffering. I was like, no, I mean, obviously they're building it so she doesn't. She's hiding it. They didn't show Tula take everything off, just to censor. But like, she's talking to. Oh, I had her as Granny's sister.
Yeah,
her name is Sister Avila, I believe. She's talking to her, and she's like, that was really hard. And Tula's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go put this in the storage room. And I was like, 100% walk into a body. Didn't think that it was gonna be connected to a freaking AI, which is when she starts talking to it and it was responding. I was like, what is going on? Did not see that happening really. It was really, really just like throws everything off kilter because like obviously Dorothea, you guys brought it up a little bit earlier, hated machine. She said preaching to her followers, never create a machine in the likeness of the human mind or something like that, which this is what that is. This is like an AI mind that is a supercomputer that is just smarter than the human brain. So, I obviously, hints to why Raquel didn't have Dorothea. You guys kind of brought that up. But I was just last day I was cracking the fuck up because Tula's saying to what's the AI's name? Arisul?
Anirul?
Anirul, that's what it was. She was talking to Anirul saying like the proper amount of spice will rejuvenate her. And then it's just a fuck ton is just blown in like it's a money grab machine from the hurricanes. It's just pumping that shit in there. And I was like, I thought it was going to be small doses, like right into the vein.
No.
But I was just
the world's greatest hot box.
Kind of, yeah.
Well,
yeah, you want to talk about a clam bake? That's a clam bake right there.
It's funny you say that because I got 2 points here. The first being the hot box. Oh my god, how did it do that? It did the balloon. There's some things that make emojis happen, but anyway, the hot box. Like, joking aside, that was giving me fades of the Spacing Guild. Because what the Spacing Guild in the current movies, like Dune 1 and Dune 2, what their whole deal is that they're just drowning in spice being shot in an isolated helmet usually, and that's what it kind of looked like. The space I would have been happy if this was like the initial start of maybe the spacing guild, but obviously that can't be the case because it's been around and they're already traveling by spice. But there is something there. Maybe that's enough to just say that the explanation that these type of chambers exist with that technology is because of the spacing guild, and I'll be happy enough because that is what they do. They need to be drowning in the spice at like all times just to have that prescience so they can travel through space. So that's cool. So maybe that's like an Easter egg, or maybe there's going to be more there. Who knows? But the more interesting piece that I want to bring up, and Paul, I don't know if you saw this, but it was brought up on Discord by Furlisa, another friend of the pod. What she said, I totally did not have enough time to chew on this episode to really think about, but she was saying that maybe Lila is what the reckoning prophecy is about, because the main part about it is twice born, one from blood, again from spice. I was assuming it was going to be Paul Atreides or Desmond, but what if it's Lila here? Like, that is a really cool twist. Now there's three options, and I feel like Paul's probably the least likely, unless that's just like the final reveal of the last episode where it was about Paul all along. But in the short term, I think it's now almost more likely to be Lila than Desmond. Who knows? Like, that could be the reason that the prophecy talks about that.
I like that because on the chance that the way to keep Lila alive is this continual usage of spice to like keep her mind going, like is it a one-time injection, or is it something that she needs to continually ingest for her brain to stay alive? And if it's that is leading me, based off what we talked about earlier too, what we're saying is the spice something that can keep that connection to the ancestors from the agony, like it keeps that pathway open, that third eye type of thing open. And is that then like Dorothea, like the conflict between the AI reviving Lila and her being aware of the AI, with maybe the potential of Dorothea to take over her body?
I'm all in.
Through that connection, and Dorothea is anti the AI. So is it the ruination of the sisterhood from Dorothea's kind of Puritan ideals of the anti-machine thing, where she's, under no circumstances is the machine worthwhile? Well, obviously Raquella and Valia are. Obviously the machine has a use in this sense for the genetic archive. So there's a lot of ways that could go. I'm just, so again, episode 4 needs to give us answers.
One of my first guesses when Lila was dying, I thought they confirmed she died. So I was saying that one of my guesses at that end of that podcast was that I thought originally Dorothea was going to take over her body, and it seems like it might still happen. And that's more interesting than if Lila ends up being the reason that she's like the prophecies about her. I would rather it be with the mind of Dorothea, because who cares if it's just a spiced up Lila that's not as cool or threatening, I would say, than a pissed off Dorothea.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Tulla, is she someone that can chart her own path? I mean, she's making this decision to break from Valia, but will she be like a leader of a break faction, or is she more of the sheep mindset where an AI Lila like becomes almost a leader of a faction that Tulla kind of starts to follow her almost, and then obviously Sister Jen slides in. So
then there's a lot of Desmond AI in there if he's actually AI.
A lot of ways that this can go, man. A lot of ways that this can go. Maybe did Desmond almost tap into something similar through the worm? Like, was he did he go through the agony himself inside the worm and then was rejuvenated through spice, and then he has this connection to the ancestors that made him evolve biologically to have this power? Who can say?
It could work.
Maybe they're both the answer.
Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I'm getting lost in the dust of my own thoughts of this discussion right now. Like, I have one thought and then you bring up another point, and like I forgot Desmond is an AI theory was going on. But I'm like, holy shit, that works perfectly, because like very beginning of this episode, we see Valia present time. She's speaking to the one sister who has the blue eyes. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. She tells Kayla. She reiterates this prophecy to Valia, and immediately Valia's like, Desmond Hart, it's Desmond. So yeah, I kind of heard that and was like, all right, that's confirmation of it. And then I didn't really think about it at all. But Lila makes perfect sense. Valia confirming that could have been a red herring.
Your TV brain didn't go off that when she confirms that it's Desmond, that's not confirmation that it's not Desmond.
Dude, I'm talking theories about rings coming back in the future. For some reason,
It's
this
too
one
easy.
fucking goes
When
way
they
over my
give me
head.
an answer in episode 3, it means that's not the answer. You just write. It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just
That's
cracking
what I
up.
said
usually what it
last episode when we talked about it. I was like, it's too easy of a conclusion to draw for it to be Desmond when they told us last episode. There had to be
Yeah.
more to it.
That's why I was laughing, because I was like, we talked about this for like 15 minutes is what it felt like, and then we just got a confirmation answer like right away. But apparently could be a huge red herring, and I love this theory because 100% she is being born again in Spice. So
Mm-hmm.
I dig it.
Yeah. And you just brought up there one of the points I was going to bring up because it's a very small scene. It feels weird to almost end with this stuff because the climatic part of the Lila of it all. But you're right that Michaela ends up saying about the prophecy to Valia. But we also, Kyle, I think this is important. They basically confirmed that he was swallowed by the Maker, meaning there was no like he dived before Desmond on the planet. He was swallowed by the worm, and that at least lends itself to something more super special about like the Maker Shai Hulud actually picking him for something.
I really am now convincing myself that both him and Lila went through the same process here.
I
where
love
we
it.
know that water of life comes from the inside of the worm. Like, did he ingest it, die, be rejuvenated from the spice in the same way that she was? And then are they going to face off? Are they going to agree with each other? Like, I don't know.
They're cowards if that's what happened and they don't show us. I want to see Desmond getting digested inside that worm and getting the blue goo in him.
Yeah,
That'll be so
blue
cool.
goo. I have it as agony juice is in my notes. But that's actually another interesting concept because it wasn't just one drop. Like if Desmond got 8 by Shai Hulud, he's getting flooded with that. So it would be interesting to see how much of a difference that makes. And if he did see his ancestors, I assume he did, but who are his ancestors? Do we know?
Definitely not, but we're going to find out. Maybe. Probably not, actually. Who knows? The Harts. Kevin Hart was his actual ancestor. And
that's awesome.
No. But let's just throw the last scene out there and then we can just talk about whatever we want to close out. But it is just Valia taking the acolyte and going to meet her family, which we don't know what her plan is, but she knows that it's going to be subverting expectations. Nobody would expect her to go to the other Harkonnens. So she ends up going and meeting Bobby B and the nephew that we met earlier in this season. So he still seems pissed. I don't know, because he has like the flotation device and he's like, oh, I never thought I'd see her again, rather than like flipping her off. But I'm sure he was part of the family that was requesting truth sayers. So they probably still want to work with her because now they know the power of it. But I have no idea where that's going to go. But it is nice that we're going to get Bobby B for more episodes.
I mean, you want to talk about technological progress. They have skyscrapers. This is like a cyberpunk city, man. They got elevator. Like, this is not a backwater whaling village. What the heck happened?
Wait,
yeah.
Part of me was assuming that this was on God, why do I always forget it?
Oh, that same planet.
Segundas. I thought.
Oh, I guess you know what? They might have. Yeah, they were both still there
because they just talked
of
to
the party at
Michaela.
the wedding.
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
Just at the wedding. That's a great point, because I was like, yo, what a come up. Like, is she trying to hide her influence over the family by not giving them the true sayer, but actually like sliding them pockets of cash under the table to develop the planet? Like, so I was confused, but that's a great point. That went way over my head.
I think it's like the equivalent of what they would have sent Griffin to. So remember, like they were sending Griffin to the Landsrad. Like I think it's just the equivalent of like.
I need little title cards at the bottom when we change scenes and we're still in the same location.
Like,
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know where what Atreides planet that was. I didn't.
Calderon.
Is that what it said?
Yes, I mean that's the one from the movie. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but
it's the one from the movie. But I don't think they gave us an actual name in the show, and I don't know if they're doing it on purpose to like mess with us, or they're assuming we're intuitive enough to pick up on the characters and the time place. But when that speeder came down, literally, I wrote in my notes in all caps, like, this world is fucking sick. I love it. Speeder coming down. I was definitely like, this is not Linkavale or whatever the hell the whaling place was. But this Harkonnen still talks about whaling and fur, because that's what he was talking about to Emperor Carino. He was like, "Oh, you would look
Great
good
point.
in whale fur," and all this other stuff.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
Great
it's
point. Great point.
interesting to see if that's just like the
It's
other half of the world or completely different planet, like you guys are saying. Because I agree with you, they were at the party, right? So they had to be there.
Yeah. This is on the Emperor's planet for sure. That's
Yeah.
I was totally wrong.
I'm thinking of it
one
as like an
thing-
embassy, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Who is this Harkonnen? He
The
says
nephew?
he calls her aunt. He says Aunt Tulla. Did Griffin have a kid at the Landsrad?
That's what I
No,
was
no,
just.
no.
And
Oh,
or
he did
did
say
they have
that, didn't he?
another?
No, you're right.
How can they have a nephew?
Well, it's the uncle.
No. It's Bobby B's kid
Yeah,
saying aunt, saying, hey. Oh, wait, no.
That's not. I mean, I guess maybe she's a great aunt.
that is
Then he says
confusing.
Aunt Tola too. That is weird. I didn't think about that.
That was just turning my gears because again, I know Meryl, Delco, Nick in the Discord, and we're talking about she let Ollie/Albert go, but she bangs Ori. Is there some weird way where she got pregnant there and had like?
Maybe.
But then I don't know. I mean, is this guy half a trade? That doesn't seem right though. The only I was like second watch, I was like, okay, let's see, and he was like, "How is ... Aunt Tulla doing?" Like where it's really like, "How's my mom?" But I think that's me reading way too into it. I maybe we'll get more confirmation, and maybe
That's
it is just
twist right
like
there.
an aunt thing where that's just where they fit kind of in relation to her or to him rather, but they're not like really like that directly. Like it is Bobby B, Evgeny, whatever his name is. It's his son.
And then great aunt might just work. Yeah, it's probably that, but it would be cool if it was a twist to it where somehow Ori's genes passed on, but who knows?
People with these great house names banging, I'm assuming we're having kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming we're twisting bloodlines around.
But
that's it, man.
Otherwise.
I mean,
what do you
else
think?
Is there predictions you guys have?
Well, I have a question about when Valia walks into, the Harkonnen household at the very end, right before she's going in, she's speaking to Theodosia, which that is another question. What the hell is Theodosia's part? Because she was supposed to befriend the princess, but now that they're banned from there. So like, what is Theodosia's part now? That's another question.
To fight Jen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yep.
Solidified.
Sacrifice yourself.
But before Valia walks into her house, she says, like, sacrifices must be made, sisterhood above all. Is she just talking about that, like, I'm making the sacrifice of talking with my family?
I hope
Like a
so.
pride thing.
That's what we need to do? Or is she going to go in there and just, like, drop the hammer and say, like, house is done or do something crazy? Obviously not the house is done because the house lives on. But, like, if she was going to the house to do something. But when I thought of it, I was like, majority was leaning towards she's just so pissed she has to go back and talk to her family because her whole family is like, oh, never thought I'd live to see the day and shit like that.
Right.
I hope it's
That's
that low level, like petty, where it's like she has to go back for the holidays essentially when she doesn't like her family.
That would be
like that's in
fucking-
her mind the type of sacrifice she has to make.
That would be so fucking hysterical when we're talking about, oh, you're in the sisterhood, you need to make sacrifices. Others have laid down their lives for us to thrive. And she's sitting there like, all right, sacrifices must be made. Got to go talk to my uncle. That'd be crazy.
That feeds really well into the final point I want to make in that I still like this idea that the tyranny destruction that's befalling the sisterhood is Valia and her tyrannical nature, her just like iron grip on everything that they do and like that full control. It almost felt like an underlying message of this episode was that that's just Valia's nature, whether it is pointed towards at the Atreides or it's pointed towards this control of the Imperium. Like that's just her nature, is to be this ambitious, to seize this level of control, to tell everyone what to do. So I'm still thinking that way until very explicitly proven otherwise.
So then let me ask you, does that imply that if the show goes that route, that Valia will be killed before the sisterhood crumbles and then it's going to turn into the Bene Gesserit after? her.
Yeah, I like that. I like she gets to have to get taken out because she's almost thinking too low level, essentially, and that the sisterhood ascending into this more like AI, let's even say, they have access to this much further out vision that is Paul, the Kwisatz Haderach, that stuff, and that's how we end.
That sounds good. I like
Yeah.
that. Tula's good though at the end, right? Where she's gonna be okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, thank
She's
God.
gonna coin the name. He's like, why don't we just Bene Gesserit? What are we thinking?
Yeah.
That'll be her in the room with all of them.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That'll be Tola's contribution.
Art, are we good? We ready to take it home?
Think so.
Good.
All right, that was a good episode. I actually enjoyed talking about it almost as much as I enjoyed watching. I did like the episode, so that's just thumbs up for me. Can I get an emoji? No, it's not going to happen again for me. Whatever. But as always, if you like what you heard, give Bingetown TV a follow at all social medias, bingetown.tv.com, Bingetown TV Discord. You get that there's a theme going here, right? It's Bingetown TV everywhere you got it, you know. We are covering a bunch of other things. We just wrapped up Arcane. We just wrapped up MGM Plus's From. Coming up, we have Severance on Apple TV. We're also going to be looking at Yellow Jackets coming up soon. I'm missing another big one. We are doing Silo currently, of course. One of the best shows also currently going on TV. A bunch of irons in the fire. We love TV. There's something that I promise you'll find that you like on bingetowntv.com. So check us out. So once again, we are Bingetown TV, and thanks for listening.